right, everyone, it's time to finish up this series I have been doing on this crazy allyship guidebook that was distributed by the Coca-Cola company to their employees. Now, if this is the first video you've landed on in this series, you're going to want to go back and probably start from the beginning. The last video is not a very good place to start. The beginning is a much better video. I have created a playlist for all of these videos, which I will link in the description below so you can do just that. Now, as a reminder though, just in case you've watched some other videos, and I know it's been a minute since I posted the last video, so let's just review where we're at. This is an allyship guidebook that the Coca-Cola company distributed internally to its employees. I have a spy that works there that sent it to me. In the first 3 videos, we covered the purpose of this and how Coca-Cola is defining an ally to its employees. Next, we looked at understanding how Coca-Cola is defining systemic racism, which is, spoiler alert, no different than how every other company that is doing this crazy training is defining it. Then we looked at actions you can take as an ally. In this last section, we are going to be looking at manager tools. So Coca-Cola is literally instructing its managers on how to have conversations around being an ally. So we're going to talk about that. That is the section we are going to focus on for this video. There it is right there. Now, before we get into it, 2 quick orders of business. Number 1, I really want to emphasize, I am not saying in these videos that anyone should boycott Coca-Cola. I'm not. Like, listen, you have to decide what you need to do, what is best for you, where your values lie. I'll be honest and say, I'm not boycotting Coca-Cola over this. I think that this is probably the work of some industrious diversity and inclusion, like millennial, possibly late millennial HR person or diversity director or whoever they hire to do this. I don't necessarily think that we should take this as indicative of everything Coca-Cola is doing necessarily. I mean, listen, man, we may come out with more information. There may be more information revealed that says it is, but documents like this get created in organizations all the time, and then executives just go along with it because they think they have to do it that way. It doesn't actually mean it's necessarily the most impactful thing in the world. So I'm not saying anyone should boycott Coca-Cola. I'm not boycotting Coca-Cola. What I would like Coca-Cola to do is refocus its efforts on producing soda. So maybe they could actually produce my favorite soda, which is Vanilla Coke Zero. If they started producing Vanilla Coke Zero again, instead of teaching their employees how to be good little allies, I would be very excited with that decision because I like Vanilla Coke Zero. I'm not going to buy normal Vanilla Coke. If I drink a regular Coke, my ass is going to grow like 3 goddamn inches. It's already big enough as it is. Like, I'm cool, but man, Coca-Cola, if you would just focus on what you do really well, which is to make soda, like, so many of your problems would probably be alleviated. But no, they've waded into the social justice pool like so many other organizations have. All right, that's order of business number 1. Order of business number 2, I'm going to shamelessly shill for my channel for a second. Guys, I'm doing a lot of content around this critical race theory in organizations. As an organizational psychologist, it is very important to me that we talk about this and talk about why this is harmful. Not just that we don't like it, not just that it's the other side doing it. There are actually really practical reasons about why this is incredibly harmful to organizations, not just in terms of their morale, but also in terms of team cohesion, collaboration, communication, and ultimately, yes, productivity. Training based on critical race theory gets people into a mindset of distrusting the people that they work with, and that is fundamentally antithetical to what is required to create a productive, effective organization. And for that reason alone, regardless of the politics around it, for that reason alone, organizations should run screaming of this in the other direction. So if you like my content, if you want to continue to support this work, please consider subscribing to my channel, turning on notifications, sharing it out so your friends and family can understand what is going on, because you know in the media it is absolutely being distorted to be like, Trump is racist and that is why we do not like this training. That's not what it is. This training is incredibly harmful. It is incredibly harmful to individuals. It is incredibly harmful to teams. It is a racist ideology that literally says that all white people are racist And that, I mean, honestly, it's a very white supremacist ideology, too, because the people that teach this literally say, hey, Robin DiAngelo says she was racist from the time she was in the womb. She's like one of the core people that have driven this crazy training in organizations. But B, they also say that white people are essentially like above. That's what these trainers say. That is a fundamentally white supremacist ideology. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe you believe that's true. I don't believe anyone but the people who buy into critical race theory think that's true. It is racist. That's why we don't want it in organizations. All right, let's dig in though. Let's see what Coca-Cola is telling its managers to do. They say, manager tools to facilitate conversations. If you have not already, in the coming days and weeks, you will have an opportunity to engage in conversations with direct reports and others around issues of race, injustice, and inequality. Okay, I'm going to pause there. One of the primary types of training that I have done for years is manager training. Manager training was always the most important thing to me because managers were the core guideposts of how organizations function. They were the facilitators of the culture in organizations. So if you have a really crappy boss, then the rest of your experience in that organization is going to be really crappy. So I invested a long time and a lot of resources into developing comprehensive manager training that teaches managers not only how to treat their employees as human beings and adapt to different types of work styles and that sort of thing, but also dramatically increases productivity. Managers that went through my manager training, if they actually implemented the things I told them to implement, which they didn't do all the time because that's just the life of a trainer. People don't always listen to you. But if they actually did what I told them to do, they saw productivity increases on their teams up to 30% just by changing the way they were working together. Here's my point. Managers have no godly business having conversations with their direct reports about issues regarding race, injustice, and inequality. No, that is not part of your job. It's not going to help your employees. It's not going to create more effective teams. In fact, you're just going to piss off at least half of your employees when you do this crap. So if you want to piss off half your employees, by all means, follow Coca-Cola's advice. But if any manager really goes in wanting to piss off half their employees, like, that's not someone who should be in a manager position, guys. These are things we need to care about. The conversations can be challenging and sometimes even uncomfortable. That is directly antithetical to creating effective teamwork, Coca-Cola. Active listening with empathy should be the foundation of every conversation. Outlined below are a few tools to assist you during discussions with your teammates. Oh, golly, can't wait to see what they said. Okay, so they've got a list of tools here. We're not going to go through and look at every one of them, but let's just look at this to-do list. Do identify opportunities to be more inclusive in recruitment and mentorship, etc. Well, of course, I mean, listen, managers should be looking for the best people on their team and should be looking for a diverse set of voices. But the best type of diversity in organizations is not necessarily diversity based on race, or diversity based on gender, or sexual orientation, or any of those other immutable characteristics. The type of diversity you want is diversity of approach. If you think about it, like the way I teach work styles, and work style is your approach, it's your natural preferences and tendencies. There are 4 different primary work styles that exist. Everyone is a combination of all 4 of those work styles. And what you want to do if you're a manager is try to get a good mix of people with tendencies in each of those areas so you all balance each other out. That is the type of diversity you should be looking for. And guess what? Your work style does not depend on your race. Race is not a factor in what work style you end up having. It has to do with many other things, part nature, part nurture, but it does not have to do with your race or gender or any of those other things. Educate yourself and understand your own biases. Okay, so essentially they just told their managers, do the work, watch all these stupid videos, read all these things. Frequently check for updates on Yammer and Connect. I'm sure those are in like internal employee platforms. Create a safe space for ongoing dialogue about this topic. No. Listen, are you actively encouraging people to engage in struggle sessions with their teams? Do you want productivity to grind to a screeching halt, Coca-Cola? Are you actually trying to sabotage your company? Your shareholders should be pissed. Don't assume you know how people feel or what they think. All right, I gotta throw you a bone. That's absolutely true. Managers should never assume they know how people feel or what they think. But as a manager, you are not. So, okay, I'm not going to go total like facts don't care about your feelings, but ultimately as a manager, you do want to create environments where people feel good, but you are much more concerned with their behaviors. If you have problem employees that are just, they're like obviously have low morale, they don't want to be there anymore, like the problem is not necessarily their thoughts, the problem is how they behave as a result of those thoughts. The behavior is what needs to be fixed, not necessarily the thoughts. The thoughts are their own business. You cannot change the way people think. You can only work on how they're showing up. Understand that everyone is in a different place and adjust communications accordingly. All right, yeah, that's actually true as well. And that has to do with your work style. That does not have to do anything related to race. That is a constant and has to do with your work style. Work style, it dictates how people communicate, how they collaborate, how they work with their coworkers, where they focus their energy. Do they work at a fast pace or a slow pace? Are they more accepting and warm? Are they more questioning and skeptical? All of these things have value. There's no bad work style, but everyone does communicate differently. And as a manager, it is important to be aware of that. But that's not so you can make them into little allies, Coca-Cola. That is not the point. Let's keep going. Manager tools to facilitate conversations continued. Consider how you will conduct the conversation. Why are we... Oh my god. Sorry guys, I do generally, I like reacting to these things. I don't like reading beforehand and preparing because I think you get much less authentic reactions to it. But this is actually crazy. Like, managers, if you are in charge of leading a team of people and your organization tells you to have struggle sessions with your employees, I mean, if I was in that position, I would want to actually do my job as a manager, which is to produce productive outcomes for my team. You need to ignore this advice. I don't even need to read all of this to know that this is going to be really bad advice if it in any way, shape, or form facilitates a struggle session with members of your team. Now, I will take that back if I'm wrong, and we're going to read it, we're going to find out, but that's what I think this is going to say. Be clear about the purpose of the conversation and what you'd like to achieve. It's okay to acknowledge that you may not get everything right. Just be clear about your intent and create a space for conversation. What are you trying to achieve? What is the point? I mean, you haven't even laid out what the point of any of this is. Listen more than you talk and join with others in the conversation versus leading it. Recognize people process things differently. Respect those who may not wish to engage in a conversation and do not force them to share their views. Don't push. Just make sure people feel like they have a safe space to go when and if they're ready. Managers are not qualified to have conversations with people about these types of issues. They are not. Managers are put in their role, in theory, because they, A, probably were a good individual contributor, B, have proved they are effective at leading a team of people, not to have hearts to hearts about race and inequality in America. That's absurd. Verbal conversations are best. These are sensitive topics that are best had in person because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and with most of our employee base working remotely, these conversations should be held by phone or via Blue Jeans or a team meeting. I have no idea what Blue Jeans is. We encourage members to find a time to discuss these matters verbally with their teams to foster an open dialogue centered around trust and empathy. Okay, Coca-Cola? Oh, they even talk about psychological safety. Oh, I skipped ahead. Oh my god. Okay, let's talk about psychological safety before we get to that part for a second. Psychological safety is the #1 driver of productive teams that exist in organizations. Anytime you hear the term psychological safety, what that means is trust. Do people on the team trust one another? Are they communicating openly? Do they feel that if they have a failure that their team members are going to have their back? Do they help each other out? Do they give of their resources to help and support the collective? So going back to Coca-Cola's goal here of a dialogue centered around trust and empathy. When you're talking about dialogues driven by critical race theory, that is very literally impossible. It is impossible. It might work in a fantasy universe in which you have really overdeveloped the inner world of your employees, and they are vulnerable and they are comfortable with themselves and they don't judge themselves and they don't judge. This is like, listen, I do mindfulness training, right? This is like level 15 of mindfulness training. Most people are not on level 15 of mindfulness training. Most people are on, at best, like level 2 or 3. So unless you've done a lot of pre-work with your employees to make this possible, then this is not going to work. I don't care how many beautiful PowerPoints you create, Coca-Cola, this is not going to work. Let's keep going. In addition to the possibility that your written communication could be misunderstood, it could also be shared with an unintended audience. You mean like how one of your employees was so pissed at getting this little guidebook, Coca-Cola, that they emailed it to a random person who makes videos about this stuff on the internet? You mean that sort of stuff? Thanks for that, by the way. Psychological safety is important when discussing challenging topics. This is not a time to get defensive or take feedback personally. All right, someone not getting defensive or taking feedback personally takes like years of inner work to do. Again, you saying that in a PowerPoint is not going to get the job done. This is an opportunity to develop more human connections and trust with your team and to inspire a sense of belonging. Make sure you watch out for people talking over others or dominating the conversation. That's actually a work style thing, by the way. There are some work styles that are more likely to dominate the conversation more than others. So perhaps Coca-Cola would be wise to invest in work style training. I'm just saying, it's actually been proven to work more than this nonsense. Let's see. To ensure that everyone has a chance to speak, invite everyone to share their thoughts. Prepare to diffuse or deflect tangential points in case discussions begin to derail. Be mindful and careful not to make assumptions. You may not always know how members of your team may be impacted emotionally by current events or what they may be feeling, nor are you properly trained to deal with emotional issues that people are having. Send them to a therapist. Now, I'm not talking to someone like me, man. I'm not a counselor. I'm an organizational psychologist. I am not qualified to do that type of work. If they are having emotional issues, send them to a therapist. Actually, you know what? I take that back. The APA has gone super woke, so you're gonna have to get like a good therapist who's not super woke. Oh my god. Like, this is... it's getting harder every day. For example, you may not have awareness if an employee has adopted a black child, has a member of law enforcement in their family, or if an Asian employee has been affected by the COVID bias. Perhaps an employee may appear to be unaffected personally, but may be deeply emotional about these topics. Perhaps, Coca-Cola, you might also have employees who are white men, who are good people, who have been constantly told that they're bad people by this training over and over and over and over again. You may also have... conservative employees. Coca-Cola, you might even have Trump supporters who work for you that may be really pissed off that you're making them do this. Let's move on. Be thoughtful before making any promises. As leaders, we are often looking to solve problems as quickly as possible. Okay, spoiler alert, Coca-Cola, your managers are not going to solve systemic racism. In this area, however, quick action may not be practical. People are hungry for tangible results. Listen and do not make any verbal or written promises or representations. So essentially they're saying, like, you need to have these impossible to have conversations with your team, but don't tell them when we're going to make any changes. We're not saying that. We just want you to have the show of having the allyship conversations. Instead of stating what you will do, advise what you think about the conversation and follow up with additional questions and resources as appropriate. We should be thoughtful with respect to our commitments, and additional time will help us do so. Remember, your HR point of contact can help you determine the correct response or course of action. They're literally, oh my god, they're literally telling these people, like telling their managers, essentially, like, you know, essentially to shill for them. That's what they're saying. They're saying shill for us. Make your employees believe that we care, but we're not saying we're going to do anything about it. That's what they're saying. Do not make a blanket promise to keep conversations Yo, you want your employees to have conversations with their managers where you're asking them to be vulnerable, and you're at the same time telling your managers that to make sure their employees know that these conversations may not be kept confidential. Yeah, you're real good at building psychological safety, Coca-Cola, I swear. During your conversation, an employee may ask that you keep the discussion confidential. As a manager in the company, you cannot guarantee confidentiality. If your employee discloses anything, for example, that is illegal, unlawful, or may violate a company policy, you are obligated to disclose it to the proper company officials. Wow, Coca-Cola. So you're basically trying to root people out. Congratulations. Wow. Immediately report alleged allegations of discrimination, harassment, and unfair treatment to HR. Should an employee report discrimination, harassment, or a violation of company policy, immediately contact your HR point of contact and disclose the situation for proper handling and investigation. You may be thinking, what constitutes a report of discrimination or harassment? Reports can come in many forms, and there are no magic words to trigger a complaint of discrimination or harassment. Generally, any employee allegation that a coworker, manager, or other company official made an offensive comment or decision based on their race or other protected classification should be reported. That's microaggressions, by the way. So Coca-Cola has just said, if any of your employees, especially the black ones, if any of your employees are offended by anything else that anyone says or does at any given time, that's a microaggression and report it to HR. Even allegations of discrimination or harassment involving non-employees who have or often frequent our offices and facilities should be reported. Remember, when in doubt, contact your HR point of contact for assistance. Okay. And the last page on this, no retaliation. Our policies prohibit retaliation against employees who make good faith claims of discrimination or harassment. How are you defining good faith claims? I don't know. That might be an interesting question. Please remind the employee of our company's non-retaliation policy and thank them for disclosing the matter to you. Keep the door open. Employees may not be able to share all their thoughts or concerns in one setting. Consistent with the company's purpose to make a difference, let employees know that you are available to continue the dialogue going forward. Also remind employees that the open door policy that encourages candid dialogue as just one means to resolve workplace concerns. Highlight company resources. The company has a wide variety to help employees during this time. The Employee Assistance Program, for example, is confidential assistance to help address issues employees and their dependents may be facing. Okay, so they have different therapy programs and, things they can send them to that are like helpful, whatever. Most companies do. So that's Coca-Cola's advice to managers. Then they have this helpful glossary of terms where they define things like ally, someone who stands up and fights racial oppression as if it was their own, or anti-racist, policies and practices and actions designed specifically to fight racism. Oh, they even have confirmation bias, a bias where we tend to seek information to conform to our personal beliefs, desires, and prejudices instead of merit. And it's actually not an implicit bias, Coca-Cola. No, confirmation bias. No. I mean, I guess maybe you could roundabout say it is, but there are active ways to fight confirmation bias, and I wonder if Coca-Cola has actually fought their own confirmation bias in the creation of this Allyship Guidebook. I wonder if Coca-Cola has sought feedback from employees that maybe are Trump supporters or maybe more conservative. I mean, I'm not asking employees to self-identify. You should never identify your political beliefs, especially in an organization like this. Never, ever do that. But that would actually be one way to combat Coca-Cola's own confirmation bias, is to seek out opinions of people who don't agree with you. Let's see. Microaggression. A subtle comment/action that expresses a prejudice and negative message, even if it was unintentional. Okay, so systemic racism, we can't leave off without defining that. The cumulative impact of interpersonal and institutional racism within society that creates a system that is difficult to break and can be self-fulfilling. Example, the black wealth gap versus white households has not closed at all since 1968. Okay, so this is Coca-Cola's little guidebook. They end with a video. We're not going to watch that. And then they encourage you to choose to become an ally. This is brainwashing. These types of programs are literally brainwashing. Now, again, I want to emphasize, as I've emphasized in many of my videos, there are very legitimate questions and conversations to have about race. I'm not opposed to those. There are great programs out there to help increase diversity and inclusion efforts in organizations. If they are not based on critical race theory, I am not necessarily opposed to those. What I am opposed to, and this is the hill I will die on, folks. I don't care how many clients I lose. This is the hill I will die on. I do not support and will never support the application of critical race theory, which is exactly what this is, in an organizational context. I will never do it. There is no evidence that it works. There is, in fact, evidence to the contrary to show that organizations are better off doing nothing than doing critical race theory training. That is reality. Coca-Cola, we're talking about confirmation bias, right? That is actual reality. There is no data to support that any of this helps create a more fair and just organization. So, critical race theory, just say no, it does not work. Coca-Cola really should rethink this whole thing. This is not going to help them. This is actually going to strain team relationships more than anything else. All right, guys, that's all I got for this series. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the additional insight that I was able to provide as a part of it. I'll see you soon.